holidays with ME/CFS or long COVID. How do you get through the holidays without overdoing, without causing a crash, without eating things that you know could be harmful? And the emotional portion of all of this can be really, really difficult, even if you're not sick. But even more so when there's the possibility of post-exertional malaise or a crash around the corner. So I'm really pleased to be here today with Raelan Agle, whom a lot of you know already. And we're going to be discussing this today. She is absolutely one of my favorite people in the world, and she gives so much to the ME/CFS and long hauler community. For those of you who don't know Raelan, and I know that you're going to love her as much as I do if you don't know her yet, she actually grew up with a parent who had ME/CFS for a long time. And then as an adult, Raelan developed it herself and had this debilitating condition herself for 10 years before finally recovering. And of course, if any of you have experienced this, you develop a passion for helping out others, and that's exactly what she does. She has an amazing YouTube channel. She's the author of Finding Freedom, Escaping from the Prison of Chronic Fatigue Syndrome. And on her YouTube channel, she shares interviews with experts and other people's ME/CFS recovery stories. Welcome, Raelan. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Laura. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. I appreciate you inviting me. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, I have to admit that I didn't know until fairly recently that you grew up with a parent who had ME/CFS. So I'd actually like for us to start there. I have students and clients who are parents who have ME/CFS, and I know that not being able to be there for their children in the ways that they want to be, especially around the holidays, is just so difficult. And it's just heart-wrenching to hear them talk about it. So from your perspective as the child whose parent had ME/CFS, what was that like for you during the holidays?
You know, it's interesting because my mom became unwell. Her ME/CFS came on gradually. It got fairly severe by the end, but in the beginning it was more mild. And it started when I was about 5 years old. And I don't remember really much from before I was 5. So virtually all of my memories of my mother are of her living with a chronic health condition. So I think as a child, some things become normalized. You know, you only know what you know. So, you know, I felt frustration around it sometimes and I didn't totally get it. But for the most part, I would imagine that her perspective of how it was impacting me versus how it actually was, there was a big gap, or, you know, a big disparity, because it was just normal. She was just my mom. I loved her. We had our, you know, our traditions, our all the great family stuff. And I didn't feel as a child like I was somehow disadvantaged, you know, because of it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And you know, with every single client or student that I work with who does have a child, even with a sudden onset kind of thing, I find that their children are so amazing to them. I think it's easier probably for children who are above the age of, you know, 6 or 7 because they can understand more. But you know, children are so resilient. And it sounds like for you, it was, like you said, it was normal. So that's a really good point and really interesting. So from your perspective, do you have any tips for parents about how they can be with their children during the holidays?
Yeah, well, of course, I knew we were going to be talking about this today. So I've been thinking about it quite a lot leading up to our discussion today. And, I started thinking about what what did I care about at the holidays and what didn't I care about. And I suspect there's a lot of things that parents think their kids care about, but actually don't. And if I can remove some guilt or some stress from any parents out there, because you parents out there facing this, I just have so much respect for what you're going through and what you're trying to do, because I can only imagine how challenging it is. But when it came to the holidays, I mean, I loved Christmas like any kid. I mean, Christmas, I grew up Catholic, so that was our big, December holiday for us. And I looked forward to it for so long. And the things that I didn't care about at Christmas, the things that my mom might have thought I cared about, were the fact that she was on the couch for just about all of it. She would lay down and we'd kind of set up around her. I'd sit on the floor, we'd open presents there, just have our little drinks, whatever they were, and everything was just around her on the couch. And that was just normal for me. And it didn't bother me in the slightest. I didn't see anything wrong with it. That was just mom and that was her spot. So it was fine. I also didn't care how fancy the food was. It didn't have to be a big, massive feast. It didn't have to. I think people put a lot of pressure on themselves at Christmas to come up with these elaborate baked goods and these elaborate meals. And as a child, that wasn't important to me really at all. I didn't care if everyone looked nice at Christmas. Sometimes people get all dressed up and, women feel pressure to, do their hair and makeup, and it did not matter to me what my parents were wearing or how fancy their hair looked. That just was not even, it didn't matter at all. I wouldn't, if they didn't even shower, I don't think I would notice. It just wasn't a big deal. I just think as adults, and I think maybe I'm stereotyping a little bit, but especially as women, we put so much pressure on ourselves, and society puts so much pressure on us. And I'm sure men feel it as well. But, to do something grand and to look polished and perfect and just have all of this going on. But as a child, none of that mattered to me at all. And I didn't miss any of it. I didn't care how much money was spent on presents. I just liked having presents. I was excited no matter what they were. So, our family, we did okay. My dad was working, but it's still financially tough. When you have a parent that can't work for decades, it puts financial strain. So the cost of the gifts didn't matter to me at all. What I did care about with the holidays, what made it special for me, and I guess this would be just from my own experience, my suggestion for parents to consider for things for their own families, if my experience is like anyone else's. A really big one for me was anticipation. And I've read studies that say we get more enjoyment out of the anticipation of events than the events themselves. And so for about a month leading up to Christmas, we were just excited about Christmas. And I had an advent calendar and I got to open the little box every day. And it was so exciting for me. And it was still records back then. We probably had other things, but in our home, we still had a record player. So dating myself, but we just had the same, probably like 4 records that we played every year. And I loved it. And I was able to put them on by myself. And I had my favorite songs. And, we had some simple decorations around the home. So just that month leading up to Christmas, which really didn't involve my mother having to do much of anything, tolerate some quiet music once in a while and, have an advent calendar for me to open, just was a really big thing. And then just anything around tradition. I think kids in general just love tradition. So I loved having that music. I loved that, and this is another thing where you can do the anticipation. My parents always put my presents under the tree 2 or 3 weeks early. So I just got to sit there and look at them. And it was just so exciting, like guessing what could be in them. And I was just, oh my goodness, I'm trying to peel the tape back and see if I can peek. Just, we did the thing where Christmas Day in the morning, the stocking would appear full of just little gifts, little trinkets and stuff that Santa brought in the night. And even long past when I was past believing it was Santa, I just loved that piece of it. So for me, it was just, the anticipation, just a little bit of tradition that we stuck to consistently every year. And then the time. For me, it was just all about actual time with my parents, whether they were, on the couch or whatever that looked like. I was just happy to be with them. So I don't think when it comes to kids that it needs to be grand. I think we can just hold on to some core, simple things, and your children are going to love it. And they're going to have incredible memories of their holidays as they grow up.
I loved advent calendars too. They were so much fun. Yeah, and I think that yet again, this illness has a way of making us prioritize and really bringing home what is important. So I know that parents out there who are watching this are just going to be so thankful that you shared this with them, to know that, it can be simple. Um, that's awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. I have nothing but great memories from the holidays growing up. I never felt like I was missing out on anything. I just, yeah, it was, yeah.
That's amazing. So now fast forward to when you had MECFS and the holidays. How, huh? So how was that different? How did you experience holidays while you were ill?
It's interesting. And it's interesting even just, because as you mentioned, I interview people on my channel. So I'm usually the one interviewing people and hearing about their stories. And when I heard you introducing me and saying, and she has fully recovered. And of course I know I am, and I've said this, but in that moment, I still have these moments like, oh my goodness, I really did it. Like all those years, I didn't think I was ever going to be free of it. And I really did it. Like it felt impossible. So I just want to, I think hope around the holidays is a big thing. And the holidays can be a tough time for people with stress and depression. And, it can be easy to shift our focus onto what we're missing out on. Yeah. So I just want to put that out there that, even sometimes it feels like things are never going to change, but I think it's important, especially at this time of year, to find ways to hold on to that hope and know that you are on a journey, and that things can change. And it's not necessarily what this holiday season looks like is what all the holiday seasons are going to look like. One day Lori will be interviewing you and you'll be sharing your holiday tips from the other side. But yes, so it's interesting for me because my first Christmas with MECFS, my mother had also passed away that year. So my first Christmas with MECFS was also my first Christmas without my mother. And it was just my mother, my father, and myself. So a very small family unit. So we were 3 and now we're down to 2. And both my dad were in a pretty terrible place. So that already, for anyone who's lost a close loved one, how that impacts the holidays. And right there, that changes everything. So the holidays were already never going to be the same. And I found those first couple of years, especially the first year, I just, I was angry. I had a lot of depression. I didn't handle it well. I didn't have any strategies for you that year on how to handle the holidays because I was just not in a good place and kind of just bitter even towards the holidays. And the holidays seemed like a time to just really throw it in my face, everything that I was missing out on. And it can be a tough thing. And, I think with illness recovery, there are stages of grief, and the stage I was in that anger stage for that first year. So it was tough. But then as the years progressed, I found ways to bring joy back into the holidays and to enjoy them again. And I found that, and I know we talked about this a little bit when you were on my channel, but I found very quickly that I could evolve my holiday traditions in a way that better suited me, and that it's okay for traditions to evolve, and that sometimes that they should. Because as I'd mentioned, my holiday traditions with my family, a lot of it was around copious amounts of junk food. We would start baking baked goods weeks before and stocking them up in the deep freeze, like all sorts of squares and everything, and just have like this mountain of sugar that was just out for like the whole week. And, and we would make boxes to send to people, and it all felt very well intentioned, but it's not the healthiest thing. So I started thinking, when I could attend events, what can I bring that's a healthier alternative? I'd bring some sort of sparkling non-alcoholic beverage, and I'd drink it in the same wine glass that everyone else was drinking their wine. And I found that I didn't even feel like I was missing out on anything. Just sitting there holding my pretty glass with my beverage, it didn't bother me. And I'd bring some healthier treats and foods to enjoy, depending on my level of health, whether I bought those or made those. And I found that not only was I enjoying them, but other people were devouring them as well. Because as we had talked about, everyone feels stress over the holidays and doesn't feel good, most of us, about consuming copious amounts of junk food, because that's not good for anybody. So I think it's okay to look at your traditions and, like, are these still working for me? And how can I make them better fit a healthier and happier lifestyle? I don't know.
Yeah, I just love that concept. Raelan, you're so good at reframing things and at really honing in on strategies and changes that can be made to recover from this and to manage this illness. And I love that concept of your holiday celebration evolving. I just think that's brilliant.
Yeah, and it's not just food. I mean, you don't have to radically change everything, but just by making some small changes to the menu and on things like decorations and trees. I used to think I needed a grand amount of stuff for the holidays to be special. And by the time I became unwell, I had massive Rubbermaid containers full of Christmas decorations of this insane tree that took forever to decorate, and it's just really over the top. And I couldn't do that anymore. And I just got a tiny little tree with some lights on it, which at first seemed kind of pathetic compared to my
Charlie Brown-esque at first.
Yeah, my other one was just this glittering picture of perfection. It was just a Hallmark card. And now I'm like, what is this? But I really quickly got used to it. And I found I was just happy having a little tree with some lights. I'd put it up on something high, which made it seem bigger to me. And, just put a couple simple decorations out. And I still enjoyed the holiday. I didn't enjoy them any less. All that stuff wasn't actually the reason that I was enjoying the holidays. So
yeah,
I think it doesn't have to be as big and grand as we think it is. And I think as time goes on, we keep adding ways to make it more of a spectacle. And it just, this can be a silver lining of this is, time to dial back and see how much of that is really important and what your priorities really are over the holidays.
Yeah, because, ultimately the holidays are for us to enjoy and celebrate, not to have the, picture perfect holiday card that we send to, everybody. Because I think that is what it's become.
A lot.
Yeah. So I think for anybody, even people who aren't ill and are able to do all these crazy things, I think that it's really nice to be able to rein it in and just do the small things that make us happy. I wanted to dig a little deeper into the shift that happened for you as far as that anger and bitterness, because I know that for the first many years, and even sometimes after that, but especially for the first 3 years or so that I was ill, that I had a lot of anger and bitterness that got even bigger during the holidays, because I was looking around me and seeing everybody having so much fun and hanging out together and all that stuff, and I a lot of times I couldn't join them, or it would make me really sick. And, I wasn't dealing with nearly what you were dealing with your mom transitioning too. So do you know what shifted for you so that you were able to start to bring your focus towards, okay, what are the small things that I can do, and to actually feel that joy again from that, as opposed to looking at the things that you weren't able to do?
I think for me, it was a couple of things. And I think the first piece of it is just that grief process that I went through, that we all go through. It doesn't look the same for everybody, but when I look at mine, it very much resembles, I think it's Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. I hope I'm crediting the right person, but the denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, that very much, mine was actually quite linear in that order. So I just, as time progressed, and I moved out of that anger stage and depression, I got to more of a place of acceptance. And one of the things that happened during that time, or that helped me, I think, to get there, was just getting over it. I had massive FOMO, like fear of missing out
Yeah.
on anything. I
Yeah.
wanted to be at every party, every celebration, every person who invited me for lunch, I wanted to go. Like I wanted to do it all.
Totally.
And it felt so devastating at the beginning, like to miss out on a holiday celebration of some sort. It just felt like, such a massive thing. And in time, I realized it's not. Like these things are happening year after year after year on repeat. They're not as big and special and one-off as they feel in the moment. And I find every once in a while, I would just sit out these celebrations, and then within a day, I'd forgotten about it. It's not like I was sitting there ruminating over what I missed out on and, depressed for days or weeks. So yeah, I think it was just a natural moving into more of an acceptance stage and realizing that I didn't have to be at every event. And it wasn't as important as I had thought it was.
Yep. That's great. I know that part of what happened for me was that I felt like I was going to be forgotten. I felt like I was just going to disappear. And I think that was something, I think that's a big thing to kind of come to terms with, because I also finally realized that, because I think every once in a while, people were like, oh, it was great to see you, at the party or whatever. And I was like, no, I wasn't there. You're imagining that. So I think, for me, at least, I started to realize that that wasn't the thing to be focusing on. Again, it was taking a look at the long-term view of, okay, well, eventually I do think that I'm going to get out of this, and I'm going to be able to hang out with those people again.
And I think to some extent we are forgotten if you're not there, because I don't think people pay as much attention to us as we think that they do, because we go through life with something what they term the spotlight effect. We think that everyone is so hyper focused on everything that we do and that our life is so important to them. But, it's really not. Whether we come, whether we don't, I'm sure, our close people in our lives would prefer for us to be there. But it's just, yeah, people are focused more inward and what we do or what we wear when we show up or how long we stay, if we leave early, all those, if we drink alcohol or not when everybody else is. Like, I don't think anyone's paying as close attention to all of that as we think. So I think it's just, don't be afraid to have your own boundaries and use timers and, keep that focus on your health routines. I know it's way more challenging over the holidays, but keep thinking about sleep and rest and the things that you're eating and pacing. With the holidays, there's something that I used to use that I called the bookends pacing system, but it was just having a conscious plan and approach to what's happening immediately before and immediately after a high energy activity. So make sure you're resting leading up to it, and make sure you don't have anything planned after it. And depending on the level and severity of your health condition, that's going to vary. Some people might need to take half a day before and after to just really get some real rest. For some people, it might be, a week before, a week after, but just being aware of that and using timers. Like you had said, you'd use a timer at holidays. And I think that's brilliant, because it's easy for us to say, I'm going to go and I'm going to stay an hour or however long is a good time for us. But it's really hard in the moment to pull yourself out and have those tough conversations with people. Like, I know we're in the middle, but I'm going to go. But if you have an alarm that goes off, it's just this audible interruption to the moment, and it brings attention, and it's a good segue to the people around you. Like, oh, my self-care timer, keeping myself in check here. So that's my note that I need to, start heading home. So yeah, I think it, like every other time of the year, you need to be taking care of yourself, and you need to be a bit selfish and keep those boundaries in place and keep yourself a priority, because the cost when you're facing chronic illness to not doing those things can be severe. So it's just important to, to keep that in mind.
I love that term, bookends, pacing bookends. Yeah, that's one of the things that I teach as well. So if both of us are advocating it, we know it's got to be good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it came to me one time. I was talking to someone and they said we go through life with activity bookends. Like we seem to just pile things one on top of another and just not thinking about it's just I do well with a good physical thing to visualize, and it just helps me to see, like, think about those gaps before and after, and don't load yourself up, and because you set yourself up to fail, and then it's not a good situation.
Yeah, totally. Um, any other strategies that you want to share with us about holidays? I think we've gone through a lot of really good ones.
Yeah, I think I covered the main ones. You touched on this briefly, but the other really big one is stress. I think we think of the holidays as a happy time, and in many ways they are, but they also bring on a lot of stress. There could be family drama, there could be obligations we're putting on ourselves for what we need to do, and so forth. And I think most of us appreciate that, especially when you're facing chronic health conditions like ME, CFS, or long COVID and so forth, that stress can be really, really devastating. And for me, when I was still living with ME/CFS, stress could level me like you think I had just tried to run a marathon. Like it could just wipe me out, and it could take me weeks to get back on track. So, I think this time of year, more than ever, whatever your strategies and tools are for managing stress, just to make sure that you're committing to them, whether that's meditation, or if you have some brain training activities, or you have ways, different strategies for incorporating more real rest into your life, just making sure that that's front and center, and to not forget that even though this is a joyous time, it is still full of a lot of stress, and that sometimes it can sneak up on us, and then we're not managing it as we should.
Yeah, that's so good. So important to remember. And you actually did this wonderful thing when we were recording for you, and that is, for those of you who are out there who have long COVID or ME/CFS, what are some strategies that you use to be able to manage the holidays and to take good care of yourself during the holidays? Go ahead and put those for us in the comments below so that we can all trade them, so that, because so many of you out there have such great ways to approach this, and we all learn from each other, always, even after, me coaching people for 20 years now with ME/CFS and now with long COVID, I still learn new ways of doing things, and different ways of doing things from my students and clients. So really love that. And Raelan, is there anything else that you'd like to say or share with us before we sign off here?
I just, kind of as always, for anyone who's watching who is currently facing, a chronic illness right now, just to have some compassion with yourself and kindness to yourself. And I know it's a bit of a cliche, but, think how you would talk to a friend who's going through something similar. I think a lot of us we've determined that come down with these conditions also have an element of, pushing ourselves or overachieving, and we can be really hard on ourselves. So I know it can be tough. You're going through something tremendous. It's okay if you're struggling. We all do. It's just, I just want people to hold on to hope, and to know how powerful you are, and to know that even when it feels like you're stuck, there are so many options right now. There's such a wealth of information out there, so many programs, so much support, research happening, so many reasons to be hopeful. So just keep at it, keep doing what you're doing, and I believe you'll get there.
Yes. I second all of that. Raelan, thank you so much for being here with us. I'm going to put a link to Raelan's amazing YouTube channel below, and to all of her socials. She has a great Instagram. You can follow her there also, and other places. And it's just always so much fun doing this with you, Raelan, and you always have so much wisdom to share with us. And you're your understanding and intention is just palpable. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor, and I'm so appreciative of you, Lori, of everything you do to support people, especially now over the holidays. I think it's important now more than ever. So yeah, thank you. Right back at you.
Great, thanks. All right, everybody, we'll see you in the next video, and have great holidays.